Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How are you all doing? Hold on. Hold on. I think there may be somebody at the door. Ratter is not home. Guys! No, she is not home. That is the DoorDasher dropping off the food and the dogs being very excited. But welcome. How is it going? I see space. Whoop. How's the volume on the music, by the way? Whoop. No, it's charging. Jill, why are you shouting? That's my thing. Am I shouting? Do. Turn down the music a little bit more. Whoop, too much. There we go. I'm blowing out the mic. Let me see where I'm at. Hello. I'm testing the mic. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Better. Yes, I agree. So let's go ahead and start with some warm-ups, shall we? Let's do some tongue twister. Let's do this. A sibilance tongue twister. Stop right now. Stop stressing those S's. Stop making sipping sounds with supersonic sentences. Sip some water, sip some tea, and simply take a stance. Change your microphone position and no more sibilance. Sibilance is apparently the sound of a hard S at the end of a sentence. Silly sibilance sentences. Silly senseless sibilance sentences. Separate seagulls from southern semblances. Serious decisions, several musicians, sanctioned songs for soprano mistresses, supersonic sensitive fences, suppository, savory, succulent pittances, sibilance sounding, sibilance causing, silly senseless sibilance sentences. Nailed it. Do. Blended sounds. Two-letter blends. Blistering blizzards. Blended, bloated, blinded, blight. Bless, blink, black and blue. Blended, bloated, blinded, blight. Blistering blizzards, blue by you. Blitz, blast, blob and bloke. Blissed, blinked, bladder and bloat. Blubber, blunt, blissfully blue. Blistering blizzards, blue by you. Silly sibyls, separate sibyls. Sentences, senseless, simmersims. Snoring snails. Snore snail, snap snoop, sneak snuck, snout snoot. Yep, snoot. Snarl sneer, snipe snip, sniff snuff, snake snitch, squabble squealers, squirrel squash, squash squids, squid squeeze, squats, squawkers, squint and squeal, squealers, squabble, and squat. Brash, trash. Crash, splash, smash, trash, flash, stash, mash, brash, thrash, clash, wash, establish. That's like one of those ones where it's like, say T-O, say T-U, say, whatever, and it's like, two-to-twoo, or whatever. But, this was crash, splash, smash, clash, wash. Ooh, a Spanish tongue twister. Let's see how well I can do this. Tres tristes tigres triscaban trigo en un trigal. Un tigre, dos tigres, tres tigres trigaban en un trigal. Que tigre trigaba más, todos trigaban igual. En tres tristes trastos de trigo, tres tristes tigres comían trigo. Comían trigo tres tristes tigres en tres tristes trastos de trigo. Uy! Let's see, what are these? Video game tongue twisters. Use this tongue twister to warm up for video game copy. See how quickly you can say these sentences aloud without tripping up. Victors violently... What was that? Victors violently, viciously, venomously, vehemently, vigorously vie for victory. Vie for victory. Victors violently, viciously, venomously, vehemently, vigorously vie for victory. Victors, faster now. Okay, why would it not just tell you to repeat it? Victors violently, viciously, venomously. Victors violently, viciously, venomously, vehemently, vigorously vie for victory. Even faster. Great. Now try this one. Jungle rumble, tumble, fumble, stumble. Jungle rumble, tumble, fumble, stumble. Jungle rumble, tumble, fumble, stumble. It's another one. He tried to trick the twister with his own tongue twister, but ended up tied tongue, tripped up, triple twined, and totally twisted. Bombastically bury them on the beaches, strategically strike the enemy down, bombard and obliterate in the air, smash and smolder on the ground. Physicality in video game work. Exercising facial muscles. Let's try that. Facial exercises benefit your voice just like regular exercises benefits your body. Try the following facial exercises. Raise your eyebrows as high as you can and hold for 5 seconds. This is ridiculous. Open your mouth as wide as possible and stick your tongue out as far as you can. Hold for several seconds. This is going to freak you out. Okay. Using your 3 center fingers, press down on your cheeks and smile as hard as you can to raise your cheek muscles against your fingers. Press down on your cheeks and smile as hard as you can. Okay, it's enough smiling for this boy. Move your nose as much as you can from side to side. I can't do it. I can't do it. Fuck. Lift your eyebrows as high as you can, open your eyes as wide as possible, and frown at the same time. Okay, here's another one. That's great. Pucker your lips out as far as possible in the shape of an O, then change your expression into a wide smile. Repeat several times. Sit in a comfortable chair and look up at the ceiling. Pucker your lips and stick your tongue out as far as possible to exercise your neck muscle. Pucker your lips and stick your tongue out as far as possible to exercise your neck muscles. Okay. Let's do some open vowel warm-ups. Is this he, hi, hum, ho, hum. Heidi, he, Heidi, ho, papa, papa, lee, papa, lo. Papa, lee, papa, lo. Let your tongue get used to touching the roof of your mouth with these words. Tip, top, tiny, tut, tip, top, tiny, tot, toot, toot, tout. Tip, top, tiny, tut, toot, toot, tout. Tip, top, tiny, tot, toot, toot, tout. Please read with a conversational, friendly tone. No announcer, please. Mindful. I'm mindful of my Creator, my good Lord and Savior, for all He has provided and brought me through. I am mindful of my blessings, my home and my dressings, my ability to function as well as I do. What more can I ask for? Don't know that I need more. So satisfied with all He has done. His love is so perfect. Don't know that I'm worth it, but I will keep on doing all that He wants me to do. Add the following line and read it in a more conversational tone. Did I ever tell you that I really get a kick out of nature and love? Seriously, I really do. Then go from there into the copy. Did I ever tell you that I really get a kick out of nature and love? Seriously, I really do. The birds and the bumblebees, the flowers and the sycamore trees, the crescent moon up above, and a thing called love. I believe in a thing called love, just like another ring in my heart. I believe in a thing called love. Okay, let us try. Read with pace. Betty B. Betty B. Biaz, Cameron Diaz. Betty B. Beep, Meryl Streep. Betty B. Bully, Angelina Jolie. Betty B. Bison, Cicely Tyson. Betty B. Bobbers, Julia Roberts. Betty B. Binslet, Kate Winslet. Betty B. Bank, Hilary Swank. Betty B. Bippen, Nicole Kidman. Betty B. Banison, Jennifer Aniston. Betty B. Perry, Halle Berry. Okay. 20th Century Fox. Practice giving each actor equal vocal billing. That means equal emphasis on each name. 20th Century Fox is proud to present Angela Bassett, Taye Diggs, and Whoopi Goldberg. Universal Pictures presents Alfre Woodard, and introducing Zelda Harris, Crooklyn, a Spike Lee joint. Read each tag with a lot of enthusiasm. It's America's #1 comedy. It's the #1 comedy in America. It's the #1 comedy in the country. Come on down! Alright, I think that is good for warm-ups. Let us go into the next playlist that I have that is fantasy video game music. Play all. Of course, I get an ad for Wayfair, and do I have this on? There we go. And I also wanted to see if I could find a good background. Fairy tale background. I love the caveat, it's fantasy video game music as opposed to real life video game music. Well, you know what I mean, the genre. Okay. Let us go here. Oh, you know what? Give me just a second. I gotta go grab the food from the front porch. Just 1 second. Alright. I think we're good. Let's go ahead and pull up this. Make sure everything looks okay on my end. You guys are ridiculous. Alright, so we are reading Grimm's Fairy Tales. So let's just jump right into one, huh? Let's see here. What would be a good one to read? Now, these are the Grimm's Fairy Tales, so these are like the really, really fucked up ones, i.e. the original ones. Let's see. There's Cinderella. The Glass Coffin. What? What is the Glass Coffin? That sounds seriously fucked up. Okay. Let's read that. I need some way to see the chat. have to read it off my phone this way. Okay. The Glass Coffin. Let no one ever say that a poor tailor cannot do great things and with high honors. All that is needed is that he should go to the right smithy of most consequence, that he should have good luck. A civil adroit tailor's apprentice once went out traveling, and came to a great forest, and, as he did not know the way, he lost himself. Night fell, and nothing was left for him to do, but to seek a painful solitude. He might certainly have found a good bed on the soft moss, but the fear of the wild beasts let him no rest there, and at last he was forced to make up his mind to spend the night in a tree. He sought out a high oak, climbed up to the top of it, and thanked God that he had his goose with him, for otherwise the wind which blew over the top of the trees would have carried him away. After he had spent some hours in the darkness, not without fear and trembling, he saw, at a very short distance, the glimmer of light. The glimmer of light. And as he thought that the human habitation might be there, where he would be better off than on the branches of a tree, he got carefully down and went towards the light. It guided him to a small hut that was woven together of reeds and rushes. He knocked boldly. The door opened, and by the light which came forth, he saw a little hoary old man. Hoary. I've never heard of that before. Hoary old man who wore a coat made of bits of colored stuff sewn together. "Who are you, and what do you want?" asked the man in a grumbling voice. I'm a poor tailor," he answered, "whom night has surprised here in the wilderness, and I earnestly beg you to take me into your hut until morning." "Go your way," replied the old man in a surly voice. "I will have nothing to do with runagates. Seek for yourself a shelter elsewhere." Shit. I'm getting just like crap in my throat. After these words, he was about to slip into his hut again, but the tailor held him so tightly by the corner of his coat and pleaded so piteously that the old man, who was not ill-natured as he wished to appear, was at last softened, and took him into the hut with him, where he gave him something to eat and then pointed out to him a very good bed in a corner. The weary tailor needed no rocking, but slept sweetly till morning, but even then would not have thought of getting up, if he had not been aroused by a great noise. A violent sound of screaming and roaring forced its way through the thin walls of the hut. The tailor, full of unwonted courage, jumped up, put his clothes on in haste, and hurried out. Then, close by the hut, he saw a great black bull and a beautiful stag, which were just preparing for a violent struggle. They rushed at each other with such extreme rage that the ground shook with their trampling, and the air resounded with their cries. For a long time, it was uncertain which of the two would gain the victory. At length, the stag thrust his horns into the adversary's body, whereupon the bull fell to the earth with a terrific roar and was thoroughly dispatched by a few strokes from the stag. The tailor, who had watched the fight with astonishment, was still standing there motionless when the stag in full career bounded up to him, and before he could escape, caught him up in his great horns. He had not much time to collect his thoughts, for it went in a swift race over the stock and stone, mountain and valley, wood and meadow. He held with both hands to the top of the horns and resigned himself to his fate. It seemed, however, to him just as if he were flying away. At length the stag stopped in front of a wall of rock and gently let the tailor down. The tailor, more dead than alive, required a longer time than that to come to himself. When he had in some degree recovered, the stag, which had remained standing by him, pushed its horns with great force against the door which was in the rock, that it sprang open. Flames of fire shot forth, after which followed a great smoke which hid the stag from the sight. The tailor did not know what to do, or whither to turn, in order to get out of this desert and back to human beings again. Or whither to turn. Okay, yeah. Or whither to turn, in order to get out of this desert and back to human beings again. Whilst he was standing thus undecided, a voice sounded out of the rock, which cried to him, "Enter without fear, no evil shall befall you thee." He hesitated, but driven by mysterious force, he obeyed the voice and went through the iron door into a large, spacious hall, whose ceiling, walls, and floor were made of shining, polished, square stones, on each of which were cut letters which were unknown to him. He looked at everything full of admiration, and was on the point of going out again, when once more he heard the voice which said to him, "Step on the stone which lies in the middle of the hall, and great good fortune awaits thee." His courage had already grown so great that he obeyed the order. The stone began to give way under his feet, and sank slowly down into the depths. When it was once more firm, the tailor looked around. He found himself in a hall which its size resembled the former. Here, however, there was more to look at and admire. Hollow places were cut into the walls, in which stood vases of transparent glass, which were filled with colored spirit or with bluish vapor. On the floor of the hall, two great glass chests stood opposite to each other, which at once excited his curiosity. When he went to one of them, he saw inside it had a handsome structure like a castle surrounded by farm buildings, stables and barns, and a quantity of other good things. Everything was small, but exceedingly carefully and delicately made, and seemed to be cut out by a dexterous hand with the greatest exactitude. He might not have turned away his eyes from the consideration of this rarity for some time, if the voice had not once more made itself heard. It ordered him to turn around and look at the glass chest which was standing opposite. How his admiration increased when he saw therein a maiden of greatest beauty. She lay as if asleep, and was wrapped in her long, fair hair as in a precious mantle. Her eyes were closely shut, but the brightness of her complexion and a ribbon which her breathing moved to and fro left no doubt that she was alive. The tailor was looking at the beauty with a beating heart when she suddenly opened her eyes, and started up at the sight of him in joyful terror. "Just heaven!" cried she. "My deliverance is at hand! Quick, quick! Help me out of my prison. If thou pushest back the bolt of this glass coffin, then I shall be free." The tailor obeyed without delay, and she immediately raised up the glass lid, came out, and hastened in the corner of the hall, where she covered herself with a large cloak. Then she seated herself on a stone, ordered the young man to come to her, and after she imprinted a friendly kiss on his lips, she said, "My long-desired deliverer, kind heaven has guided thee to me and put an end to my sorrows. On the self-same day when they end, shall thy happiness begin." Fuck. There's a bug. Shit. This is a kinky story. "Thou art the husband chosen for me by heaven, and shalt pass thy life in unbroken joy, loved by me, and rich to overflowing in every earthly possession. Seat thyself, and listen to the story of my life. I am the daughter of a rich count. My parents died when I was still in tender youth." What song is this? Shit. It was just like in the middle.
If you want to ace your paper,
You want to ace your paper? Shut up. Alright. I'm the daughter of a rich count. My parents died when I was still in my tender youth, and recommended me in their last will to my elder brother by whom I was brought up. We loved each other so tenderly and were so alike in our way of thinking and our inclinations that we both embraced the resolution never to marry, but to stay together to the end of our lives. In our house there was no lack of company. Neighbors and friends visited us often, and we showed the greatest hospitality to every one. So it came to pass one evening that a stranger came riding to our castle, and under pretext of not being able to get on to the next place, begged for shelter for the night. We granted his request with ready courtesy, and he entertained us in the most agreeable manner during supper by conversation intermingled with stories. My brother liked the stranger so much that he begged him to spend a couple of days with us, to which, after some hesitation, he consented. He did not rise from the table until late in the night. The stranger was shown to a room, and I hastened, as I was tired, to lay my limbs in my soft bed. Hardly had I slept for a short time when the sound of a faint, delightful music awoke me. As I could not conceive from whence it came, I wanted to summon my waiting maid who slept in the next room, but to my astonishment, I found that speech was taken away from me by an unknown force. I felt as if a mountain were weighing down my breast and was unable to make the very slightest sound. In the meantime, by the light of my lamp, I saw the stranger enter my room through two doors which were fast bolted. He came to me and said that by magic arts which were at his command, he had caused the lovely music to sound in order to awaken me, and that he now forced his way through all fastenings with the intention of offering me his hand and heart. My repugnance to his magic arts was, however, so great that I vouchsafed him no answer. He remained for a time standing without moving, apparently with the idea of waiting for a favorable decision. But as I continued to keep silence, he angrily declared he would revenge himself and find means to punish my pride, and left the room. I passed the night in the greatest disquietude, and only fell asleep towards morning. When I awoke, I hurried to my brother, but did not find him in his room, and the attendants told me that he had ridden forth with the stranger to chase by daybreak. I at once suspected nothing good. I dressed myself quickly, ordered my palfrey to be saddled, and accompanied only by one servant, rode full gallop to the forest. The servant fell with his horse, and could not follow me, for the horse had broken its foot. I pursued my way without halting, and in a few minutes I saw the stranger coming towards me with a beautiful stag which he had led by a cord. I asked him where he had left my brother and how he had come by this stag, out of whose great eyes I saw tears flowing. Instead of answering me, he began to laugh loudly. I fell into a great rage at this, pulled out a pistol and discharged it at the monster. But the ball rebounded from his breast and went into my horse's head. I fell to the ground, and the stranger muttered some words which deprived me of consciousness. When I came to my senses again, I found myself in this underground cave in a glass coffin. The magician appeared once again and said he had changed my brother into a stag. My castle, with all that belonged to it, diminished in size by his arts, he had shut up in another glass chest, and my people, who were all turned into smoke, he had confined in glass bottles. He told me that if I would now comply with his wish, it was an easy thing for him to put everything back in its former state, as he had nothing to do but open the vessels and everything would return once more to its natural form. I answered him as little as I had done the first time. He vanished and left me in my prison, in which a deep sleep came to me. Amongst the visions which passed before my eyes, that was the most comforting in which a young man came and set me free. And when I opened my eyes today, I saw thee, and beheld my dream fulfilled. Help me to accomplish the other things which happened in those visions. The first is that we lift the glass chest in which my castle is enclosed onto that broad stone. As soon as the stone was laden, it began to rise up on high with the maiden and the young man, and mounted through the opening of the ceiling in the upper hall, from whence they could easily reach the open air. Here the maiden opened the lid, and it was marvelous to behold how the castle, the houses, and the farm buildings which were enclosed stretched themselves out and grew to their natural size with the greatest rapidity. After this, the maiden and the tailor returned to the cave beneath the earth, and had the vessels which were filled with smoke carried up by the stone. The maiden had scarcely opened the bottles when the blue smoke rushed out and changed itself into living men, in whom she recognized her servants and her people. Her joy was still more increased when her brother, who had killed the magician in the form of the bull, came out of the forest towards them in his human form. And on the same day the maiden, in accordance with her promise, gave her hand at the altar to the lucky tailor. She shot the horsey. She did shoot the horsey. But, could have been worse. At least she wasn't related to the horsey, so there's that. Woo! Alright. So that was the glass coffin. Gotta say, I have never heard that story before. Ooh, this is, the classic story of Rapunzel. Sounds like a good one. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. Is this another Baldur's Gate? Fuck. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length, the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day, the woman was standing by the window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, in parentheses, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What aileth thee, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of the rampion, which is in the garden below our house, to eat, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let my wife die, bring her some of the rampion thyself. Let it cost thee what it will." In the twilight of the evening, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion, and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it with such relish. She, however, liked it so much, so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of the evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clambered down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How canst thou dare," said she with an angry look, "to descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? Thou shalt suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened and said to him, "If the case be as thou sayest, I will allow thee to take away with thee as much rampion as thou wilt. Only I make one condition. Thou must give me the child which thy wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child beneath the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in a forest and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed her beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair to me." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braid tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or two, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and went by the tower. Wait, so she's 14 now. 13 or 14. Then he heard a song, which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who was in her solitude past her time in letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her and looked for the door of the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he had heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I will once try for my fortune," said he, and the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." Immediately the hair fell down, and the king's son clambered up. At first Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man such as her eyes had never yet beheld came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had left him no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than old Dame Gothel does," and said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, "I will willingly go away with thee, but I do not know how to get down. Bringing with thee a skein of silk every time that thou comest, I will weave a ladder with it, and when that is ready, I will descend, and thou wilt take me on thy horse." Oh, the Simple Spirit tracks. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was Chrono Trigger. They agreed that until the time he should come to her every evening. They agreed that until the time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. They agreed that until that time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this until once Rapunzel said to her, "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, wicked child!" cried the enchantress. "What do I hear thee say? I thought I had separated thee from the world, and yet thou hast deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, and seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snap, they were cut off. And the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day, however, that she cast out Rapunzel, the enchantress in the evening fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window, and when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair," she let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above, but the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly. "Thou wouldst fetch thy dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out thy eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to thee. Thou wilt never see her more." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did nothing but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to the kingdom. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. I didn't know that her tears brought back the eyes that were gouged out. I didn't think you could do that. But, interesting. Let's see, what else we got here? The Pack of Ragamuffins. The Owl. The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. The Louse and the Flea. The Wedding of Mrs. Fox. The Fox and the Cat. The Willow Wren and the Bear. The Gnome. The Sea Hare. The Girl Without Hands. The 3 Little Birds, the 3 Snake Leaves, the White Snake, Rumpelstiltskin, Donkey Cabbages, Ferdinand and the Faithful, Snow White and the 7 Dwarves. Who's heard of that? How 6 Men Got On in the World. The Ear of Corn, The Ungrateful Son, The Willful Child. Oh my god, there are so many. The Duration of Life. Okay. Space. What medical science works in mysterious ways? Space, can you do exclamation point quote, and let's just do a random roulette of what story to read next? 295. We are about to read The White Bride and the Black One. What? Alright. Let's find out what this is about. The White Bride and the Black One. The White Bride and the Black One. A woman was going about the unenclosed land with her daughter and her stepdaughter cutting fodder when the Lord came walking towards them in the form of a poor man and asked, "Which is the way into the village?" "If you want to know," said the mother, "seek it for yourself." And the daughter added, "If you're afraid you will not find it, take a guide with you." But the stepdaughter said, "Poor man, I will take you there. Come with me." Then God was angry with the mother and daughter and turned his back on them and wished that they should become as black as night and as ugly as sin. I don't know if I want to read this story. Let's not read that one. That sounds very bad. Exclamation point quote. If you would. That is legitimately racist. Thank you. Like, that's not even like joke racist. That's just like full blown. $2.99. Okay, hopefully this one is better. It's actually the story immediately after the last one. Here we go. Little Brother and Little Sister. Little Brother took his little sister by the hand and said, "Since our mother died, we have had no happiness. Our stepmother beats us every day, and if we come near her, she kicks us away with her foot. Our meals are hard crust of bread that are left over, and the little dog under the table is better off, for she often throws it a nice bit. May heaven pity us, if our mother only knew. Come, we will go forth and together into the wide world." They walked the whole day over meadows, fields, and stony places. And when it rained, the little sister said, Heaven and our hearts are weeping together." In the evening they came to a large forest. In the evening they came to a large forest, and they were so weary with sorrow and hunger and the long walk that they lay down in the hollow tree and fell asleep. The next day when they awoke, the sun was already high in the sky and shone down hot into the tree. Then the brother said, "Sister, I am thirsty. If I knew of a little brook, I would go and just take a drink. I think I hear one running." The brother got up and took the little sister by the hand, and they set off to find the brook. But the wicked stepmother was a witch. Alright, that seems out of nowhere. But the wicked stepmother was a witch, and had seen how the two children had gone away, and had crept after them privily, as witches do creep, and had bewitched all the brooks in the forest. Now, when they found a little brook leaping brightly over the stones, the brother was going to drink out of it, but the sister heard how it said as it ran, "Who drinks of me will be a tiger. Who drinks of me will be a tiger." Then the sister cried, Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wild beast and tear me to pieces." The brother did not drink, although he was so thirsty, but said, "I will wait for the next spring." Wow, that's a long time to wait. When they came to the next brook, the sister heard this also say, "Who drinks of me will be a wolf. Who drinks of me will be a wolf." Then the sister cried out, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wolf and devour me." The brother did not drink and said, "I will wait until the next spring, but then I must drink. Say what you like, for my thirst is too great." And when they came to the third brook, the sister heard how it said as it ran, "Who drinks of me will be a roebuck. Who drinks of me will be a roebuck." The sister said, "Oh, I pray you, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a roebuck and run away from me." But the brother had knelt down at once by the brook, and had bent down and drunk some of the water. And as soon as the first drops touched his lips, he lay there, a young roebuck. The fuck is a roebuck? And now the sister wept over his poor bewitched brother, and the little roe wept as also, and sat sorrowfully near her. But at last the girl said, "Be quiet, dear little roe. I will never, never leave you." Then she untied her golden garter and put it around the roebuck's neck, and she plucked rushes and wove them into a soft cord. With this she tied the little beast and led it on, and she walked deeper and deeper into the forest. And when they had gone a very long way, they came at last to a little house, and the girl looked in. And as it was empty, she thought, "We can stay here and live." Then she sought for leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the roe, and every morning she went out and gathered roots and berries and nuts for herself, and brought tender grass for the roe, who ate out of her hand, and was content and played round about her. In the evening, when the sister was tired and had said her prayer, she laid her head down on the roebuck's back. That was her pillow, and she slept softly on it. And if only the brother had had his human form, it would have been a delightful life. For some time they were alone in this, like this in the wilderness. But it happened that the king of the country had a long hunt in the forest, held a great hunt in the forest. Then the blast of the horns and barking of dogs and merry shouts of huntsmen rang through the trees, and the roebuck heard all and was only too anxious to be there. "Oh," said he, "let me be off to the hunt. I cannot bear it any longer." And he begged so much that at last she agreed. "But," she said to him, "come back to me in the evening. I must shut my door for fear of the rough huntsman. So knock and say, 'My little sister, let me in, that I may know you, and if you do not say that, I shall not open the door.'" Roebuck is the Roblox currency. Nice. Then the young roebuck sprang away. So happy was he, and so merry in the open air. The king and the huntsmen saw the pretty creature and started after him, but they could not catch him. And when they thought that they surely had him, away he sprang through the bushes and could not be seen. When it was dark, he ran to the cottage, knocked, and said, "My little sister, let me in." Then the door was opened for him, and he jumped in and rested himself the whole night through upon his soft bed. The next day the hunt went on afresh, and when the roebuck again heard the bugle horn and the "ho, ho" of the huntsman, he had no peace, but said, "Sister, let me out. I must be off." His sister opened the door for him and said, "But you must be here again in the evening and say your password." When the king and his huntsmen again saw the young roebuck with the golden collar, they all chased him, but he was too quick and nimble for them. This went on for a whole day, but at last by evening the huntsmen had surrounded him, and one of them wounded him a little in the foot, so that he limped and ran slowly. Then a hunter crept after him to the cottage and heard how he said, "My little sister, let me in," and saw that the door was open for him and was shut again at once. The huntsman took notice of it all and went to the king and told what he had seen and heard. Then the king said, "Tomorrow we will hunt once more." Where be that music? Is it done already? Oh, it's just a... There we go. The little sister, however, was dreadfully frightened. The little sister, however, was dreadfully frightened when she saw that her fawn was hurt. She washed the blood off him, laid herbs on the wound, and said, "Go to your bed, dear Roe, that you may get well again." But the wound was so slight that the roebuck next morning did not feel it any more. And when he heard again the sport outside, he said, "I cannot bear it. I must be there. They shall not find it so easy to catch me." The sister cried and said, "This time they will kill you, and here am I, alone in the forest and forsaken by all the world. I will not let you out." "Then you will have me die of grief," answered the roe. "When I hear the bugle horns, I feel as if I must jump out of my skin." Then the sister could not do otherwise but open the door for him with a heavy heart, and the roebuck, full of health and joy, bounded into the forest. When the king saw him, he said to his huntsman, "Now chase him all day long till nightfall, but take care that no one does him any harm." As soon as the sun had set, the king said to the huntsman, "Now come and show me the cottage in the wood." And when he was at the door, he knocked and called out, "Dear little sister, let me in." Then the door opened, and the king walked in, and there stood a maiden more lovely than any he had ever seen. The maiden was frightened when she saw, not her little roe, but a man who come in, who wore a golden crown, and said, "Will you go with me to my palace and be my dear wife?" "Yes, indeed," answered the maiden, "but the little roe must go with me. I cannot leave him." The king said, "It shall stay with you as long as you live, and shall want nothing." Just then he came running in, and the sister again tied him to the cord of rushes, took it in her own hand, and went away with the king from the cottage. The king took the lovely maiden upon his horse and carried her to his palace, where the wedding was held with great pomp. She was now the queen, and they lived for a long time happily together. The roebuck was tended and cherished and ran about in the palace garden. But the wicked stepmother, because of whom the children had gone out into the world, thought all the time that the sister had been torn to pieces by the wild beast in the wood, and the brother had been shot for a roebuck by the huntsman. Now, when she heard that they were so happy and so well off, envy and hatred rose in her heart and left her no peace, and she thought of nothing but how she could bring them again to misfortune. Her own daughter, who was ugly as night and had only one eye, grumbled at her and said, "A queen! That ought to have been my luck." "Only be quiet," answered the old woman, and comforted her by saying, "When the time comes, I shall be ready." Shot over roebucks? Damn. As time went on, the queen had a pretty little boy, and it happened that the king was out hunting. The queen had a pretty little boy, and it happened that the king was out hunting. So the old witch took the form of a chambermaid, went into the room where the queen lay, and said to her, "Come, the bath is ready. It will do you good and give you fresh strength. Make haste before it gets cold." The daughter also was close by, so they carried the weakly queen into the bathroom and put her into the bath. Then they shut the door and ran away. But in the bathroom, they had made a fire of such deadly heat that the beautiful young queen was soon suffocated. When this was done, the old woman took her daughter, put a nightcap on her, and laid her in the bed in place of the queen. She gave her, too, the shape and the look of the queen, only she could not make good the lost eye. But in order that the king might not see it, she was to lie on the side on which she had no eye. In the evening, when he came home and heard that he had a son, he was heartily glad, and was going to the bed of his dear wife to see how she was. But the old woman quickly called out, "For your life, leave the curtains closed." Oh, yeah. This is the grandmother.
For your life, leave the curtains closed. The queen ought not to see the light yet, and must have rest.
The king went away and did not find out that a false queen was lying in the bed. But at midnight, when all slept, the nurse who was sitting in the nursery by the cradle, and who was the only person awake, saw the door open and the true queen walk in. She took the child out of the cradle, laid it in her arm, and suckled it. Then she shook up its pillow, laid the child down again, and covered it with a little quilt. And she did not forget the roebuck, but went into the corner where it lay and stroked its back. Then she went quite silently out the door again. The next morning, the nurse asked the guards whether anyone had come into the palace during the night, but they answered, "No, we have seen no one." She came thus many nights and never spoke a word. A nurse always saw her, but she did not dare to tell anyone about it. When some time had passed in this manner, the queen began to speak in the night and said, "How fares my child?" When some time had passed, the queen began to speak in the night and said, "How fares my child? How fares my roe? Twice shall I come, then nevermore." The nurse did not answer, but when the queen had gone again, went to the king and told him. The king said, "Ah, heavens! What is this? Tomorrow night I will watch by the child." And in the evening he went to the nursery, and at midnight the queen again appeared and said, "How fares my child? How fares my roe? Once will I come, then nevermore." And she nursed the child as she was wont to do before she disappeared. The king dared not speak to her, but on the next night he watched again. Then she said, "How fares my child? How fares my roe? This time I come, then nevermore." Then the king could not restrain himself. He sprang towards her and said, "You can be none other than my dear wife." She answered, "Yes, I am your dear wife." And at the same moment she received life again, and by God's grace became fresh, rosy, and full of health. Then she told the king the evil deed which the wicked witch and her daughter had been guilty of towards her. The king ordered both to be led before the judge, and the judgment was delivered against them. The daughter was taken into the forest, where she was torn to pieces by wild beasts, but the witch was cast into the fire and miserably burnt. And as soon as she was burnt, the roebuck changed his shape and received his human form again. So the sister and brother lived happily together all their lives. All right. Ugh. Give me just a second. I gotta go tinky winky. Do. Hello, I'm back. 'Tis me, Chill Pill.
Hi, Twinkit. Hi, Banjo. Hi, Puppet Dogs. Hi, Space.
Hello there.
All right, random time. Yup. The Pink. All right. This one is called The Pink. Do you think I should do my reading voice in a slightly deeper timbre? Do you think this would be more pleasing? Or do you think I should keep my voice kind of raised? Kind of like my normal conversing voice. Like, here are two examples. Here's my normal one. There was once on a time a queen to whom God had given no children. Now here's one with a deeper timbre. There was once on a time a queen to whom God had given no children. She'll play Glover. There was once on a time a queen to whom God had given no children. Any thought, Space? I'm gonna try reading this story in the deeper timbre, and let's see what that is like. Morrowind. There was once on a time a queen to whom God had given no children. Every morning she went into a garden and prayed to God in heaven to bestow on her a son or a daughter. Then an angel from heaven came to her and said, "Be at rest. Thou shalt have a son with the power of wishing, so that whatsoever in the world he wishes for, that shall he have." Then she went to the king and told him the joyful tidings, and when the time was come, she gave birth to a son, and the king was filled with gladness. Every morning she went with the child to the garden, where the wild beasts were kept, and washed herself there in a clear stream. It happened once when the child was a little older, that it was lying in her arms, and she fell asleep. Then came the old cook. Whoop. Then came the old cook, who knew that the child had the power of wishing, and stole it away. And he took a hen and cut it into pieces, and dropped some of its blood on the queen's apron and on her dress. Then he carried the child away to a secret place, where a nurse was obliged to suckle it, and he ran to the king and accused the queen of having allowed her child to be taken from her by wild beasts. When the king saw the blood on her apron, he believed this, fell into such a passion that he ordered a high tower to be built, in which neither sun nor moon could be seen, and his wife put into it and walled up, where she was to stay for 7 years without meat or drink, and die of hunger. But God sent 2 angels from heaven in the shape of white doves, which flew to her twice a day, and carried her food until the 7 years were over. The cook, however, thought to himself, "If the child has the power of wishing, and I am here..." Oh, there's a unicorn. Oh my god. Nope. Nope. That's too fucking stupid. Why am I getting World of Warcraft ads? I've never played this game ever. So dumb. Okay, hopefully no stupid-ass unicorns come charging through this forest. Okay. The cook, however, thought to himself, if the child has the power of wishing, and I am here, he might very easily get me into trouble. So he left the palace and went to the boy who was already big enough to speak, and then said to him, wish for a beautiful palace for thyself with a garden and all else that pertains to it. Scarcely were the words out of the boy's mouth when everything was there that he had wished for. After a while the cook said to him, it is not well for thee to be so alone. Wish for a pretty girl as a companion. Then the king's son wished for one, and she immediately stood before him, and was more beautiful than any painter could have painted her. The two played together and loved each other with all their hearts, and the old cook went out hunting like a nobleman. The thought, however, occurred to him that the king's son might someday wish to be with his father, and thus bring him into great peril. So he went out and took the maiden aside, and said, tonight, when the boy is asleep, go to his bed and plunge this knife into his heart, and bring me his heart and tongue, and if thou dost not do it, thou shalt lose thy life. Thereupon he went away, and when he returned next day, she had not done it, and said, why should I shed the blood of an innocent boy who has never harmed anyone? The cook once more said, if thou dost not do it, it shall cost thee thy own life. When he had gone away, she had a little hind brought to her, and ordered her to be killed, and took her heart and tongue, and laid them on a plate. And when she saw the old man coming, she said to the boy, lie down in thy bed, and draw the clothes over thee. Then the wicked wretch came in and said, where's the boy's heart and tongue? The girl reached the plate to him, but the king's son threw off a quilt and said, thou old sinner, why didst thou want to kill me? Now will I pronounce thy sentence. Thou shalt become a black poodle and have a gold collar round thy neck, and shalt eat burning coals till the flames burst forth from thy throat. And when he had spoken these words, the old man was changed into a poodle dog, and had a collar round his neck, and the cooks were ordered to bring some live coals, and these he ate, until the flames broke forth from his throat. The king's son remained there for a short while longer, and he thought of his mother, and wondered if she were still alive. At length he said to the maiden, I will go home to my own country. If thou wilt go with me, I will provide for thee. Ah, she replied, the way is so long, and what shall I do in a strange land where I'm unknown? As she did not seem quite willing, and as they could not be parted from each other, he wished that she might be changed into a beautiful pink, and took her with him. Then he went away to his own country, and the poodle had to run after him. It was a pink. It's literally just like a pink. She'll play World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft. Yeah. He went to the tower in which his mother was confined, and as it was so high, he wished for a ladder which could reach up to the very top. Then he mounted up and looked inside and cried, Beloved mother, Lady Queen, are you still alive, or are you dead? She answered, I have just eaten, and I am still satisfied. For she thought the angels were there. Said he, I am your dear son, whom the wild beasts were said to have torn from your arms, but I am alive still, and will speedily deliver you. Then he descended again, and went to his father and caused himself to be announced as a strange huntsman, and asked if he could give him a place. The king said yes, if he was skillful and could get game for him. He should come to him, but that deer had never taken up their quarter in any part of the district or country. Then the huntsman promised to procure as much game for him as he could possibly... Oh, look, Shade Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends. How do these stupid things get advertisements? I don't get it. Then the huntsman promised to procure as much game for him as he could possibly use at the royal table. So he summoned all the huntsmen together and bade them go out into the forest with him, and he went with them and made them form a great circle, open at one end where he stationed himself and began to wish. 200 deer and more came running inside the circle at once, and the huntsman shot them. Then they were all placed on 60 country carts and driven home to the king. And for once he was able to deck his table with game, after having had none at all for years. Now the king felt great joy at this. Oh, that's not the right intonation. Now the king felt great joy at this, and commanded that his entire household should eat with him the next day, and made a great feast. When they were all assembled together, he said to the huntsman, "As thou art so clever, thou shalt sit by me." He replied, "Lord King, your majesty must excuse me. I am a poor huntsman." But the king insisted on it and said, "Thou shalt sit by me," until he did it. Whilst he was sitting there, he thought of his dearest mother, and wished that one of the king's principal servants would begin to speak of her, and would ask how it was faring with the queen in the tower, and if she were still alive, or had perished. Hardly had he formed the wish, than the marshal began and said, "Your Majesty, we live joyously here, but how is the queen living in the tower? Is she still alive, or has she died?" But the king replied, "She left my dear son to be torn to pieces by wild beasts. I will not have her named." Then the huntsman arose and said, "Gracious Lord Father, she is alive still, and I am her son, and I was not carried away by wild beasts, but by the wretch, the old cook, who tore me from her arms when she was asleep, and sprinkled her apron with the blood of a chicken." Thereupon he took the dog with the collar and said, "That is the wretch," and caused living coals to be brought. And these the dog was compelled to devour before the sight of all, until flames burst forth from its throat. On this, the huntsman asked the king if he would like to see the dog in his true shape, and wished him back into the form of the cook, in which he stood immediately, with his white apron and his knife by his side. When the king saw him, he fell into a passion, and ordered him to be cast into the deepest dungeon. Then the huntsman spake further and said, "Father, will you see the maiden who brought me up so tenderly, and who was afterwards to murder me, but did not do it, though her own life depended on it?" The king replied, "Yes, I would like to see her." The son said, "Most gracious father, I will show her to you in the form of a beautiful flower." And he thrust his hand into his pocket and brought forth the pink, and placed it on the royal table. And it was so beautiful that the king had never seen one equal to it. Then the son said, "Now I shall show her to you in her true form," and wished that she might become a maiden. And she stood there looking so beautiful that no painter could have made her look more so. And the king sent 2 waiting maids and 2 attendants into the tower to fetch the queen and bring her to the royal table. But when she was led in, she ate nothing, and said, "The gracious and merciful God, who has supported me in the tower, will speedily deliver me." She lived 3 days more and then died happily. And when she was buried, the 2 white doves which had brought her food to the tower and were angels of heaven followed her body and seated themselves on her grave. The aged king ordered the cook to be torn in 4 pieces, but grief consumed the king's own heart, and soon he died. His son married the beautiful maiden whom he had brought with him as a flower in his pocket, and whether they are still alive or not is known to God. Jill, play Raid Shadow Legends. It's the best game. Doubt. Where are we at? 9:30 or 7:30. We'll keep going. Glad you were able to come by and listen to me talk to myself. Space. I know that these streams aren't necessarily the most exciting, but they're important for... Oh, there's a fairy. They're very important for practicing narration, finding a voice, and learning how to sight read. And it's just really important. Books that I'm reading right now about getting into voiceover and voice acting say that just reading out loud, whether it's to family members or to, like, if you volunteer at an old folks home, reading to them, reading to your kids, your nephews, your nieces, whatever, just reading out loud and getting used to reading out loud is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, especially starting out. So, I never expect these things. Hey man, anytime. Appreciate that, bro. I never expect these things to be really, really popular, but these aren't about gaining views or viewers. This is about, or subscribers. This is about me practicing something. And if you want to hang around, you are more than welcome to and encouraged to. Let's see. Give me another exclamation point quote, and let's see what story we get. This is one of my favorite soundtracks. I love Chrono Cross. Okay. What was the last one? The Lambkin and the Little Fish. Okay, so this story is called The Juniper Tree. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife. And they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the woman prayed for them day and night, but still they had none. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house in which was a juniper tree. And one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple, and while she was paring herself the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah!" said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "If I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And while she thus spake, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if that were going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone, and 2 months, and then everything was green, and 3 months, and then all of the flowers came out of the earth, and 4 months, and then all of the trees in the woods grew thicker, and the green branches were all closely entwined,
and the birds sang until the wood resounded and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelt so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell on her knees and was beside herself with joy. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was large and fine, and then she was quite still, and the 7th month she snatched at the juniper berries, and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful. Then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and wept, and said, "If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree." So, I just want to take a real quick second and let you know that besides the first sentence, starting with, then she went to the house and a month went by, and then 2 months, and then 3 months. That was all one sentence. Holy shit. What a sentence. Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over, and then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to weep sore. After some time he was more at ease, and though he still wept, he could bear it. And after some time longer, he took another wife. By the second wife he had a daughter, but the first wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but when she looked at the little boy, it seemed to cut her to the heart. For the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and the evil one filled her mind with this till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and slapped him here and cuffed him there, until the unhappy child was in continual terror, for which he came out of school he had no peace in any place.
Take your videos offline and watch uninterrupted. Try YouTube Premium on us.
Hold on. There we go. Hey, get the whole thing done in one go. Hella savings on punctuation. You gotta save money somewhere. Gotta cut costs somewhere. Okay. Deep breathing. One day, the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid. Doop. Great heavy lid with a great sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little girl, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes out of school." And when she saw from her window that he was coming, it was just as if the devil entered into her, and she snatched at the apple and took it away from her daughter and said, "Thou shalt not have one before thy brother." Then she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. Then the little boy came in the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, "My son, wilt thou have an apple?" And she looked wickedly at him. "Mother," said the little boy, "how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple." Then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, "Come with me. And she opened the lid of the chest and said, "Take out an apple for thyself." And whilst the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash! She shut the lid down, and his head flew off and fell among the red apples. Then she was overwhelmed with terror and thought, "If I could but make them think it was not done by me." So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, and held the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen. And she set him on a chair in front of the door, and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by Marlinken. Marlinken? Is it a German word? Marlinken came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she was constantly stirring around. "Mother," said Marlinken, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white, and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened." "Go back to him," said the mother, "and if he will not answer thee, give him a box on the ear." So Marlinken went to him and said, "Brother, give me the apple." But he was silent, and she gave him a box on the ear, on which his head fell down. Marlinken was terrified, and began crying and screaming, and ran to her mother, and said, "Alas, mother, I have knocked my poor brother's head off." And she wept, and could not be comforted. "Marlinken," said the mother, "what hast thou done? But be quiet, and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings." Then the mother took the little boy and chopped him into pieces, put him in the pan, and made him into black puddings. But Marlinken stood by, weeping and weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. Then the father came in and sat down to dinner and said, "But where's my son?" And then the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlinken wept and could not leave off. Then the father again said, "But where is my son?" "Ah," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great uncle. He will stay there a while." "And what is he doing there? He did not even say goodbye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go, and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He is well taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel so unhappy lest all should not be right. He ought to have said goodbye to me." With that he began to eat, and said, "Marlinken, why art thou crying? Thy brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Ah, wife, how delicious this food is! Give me some more." And the more he ate, he wanted to have, and he said, "Give me some more, you shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate, and threw all the bones under the table until he had finished the whole. But Marlinken went away to her chest of drawers, and took her best silk scarf out of the bottom drawer, and got all of the bones from beneath the table, and tied them up in her silk handkerchief, and carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder, and moved together again, just as if it were rejoicing, and clapping its hands. At the same time, a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire. And a beautiful bird flew out of the fire, singing magnificently, and he flew high up into the air, and when he was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Marlinken, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went merrily into the house, and sat down to dinner, and ate. But the bird flew away and lighted on Goldsmith's house and began to sing,
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Mulligan, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kywitt, kywitt, what a beautiful bird I am.
The goldsmith was sitting in the workshop making a gold chain when he heard the bird which was singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers. But he went away right up the middle of the street with one shoe and on one sock. He had his apron on, and in one hand he had a gold chain, and the other the pincers, and the sun was shining brightly on the street. Then he went right on and stood still, and said to the bird, Bird, said he then, how beautifully thou canst sing! Sing me that piece again.
No,
said the bird,
I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the gold chain, and then I will sing it again for thee.
There, said the goldsmith, there is the golden chain for thee. Now sing me that song again. Then the bird came and took the golden chain in his right claw, and went and sat in front of the goldsmith and sang,
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Mulligan, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kywitt, kywitt, what a beautiful bird I am.
Then the bird flew away to the shoemaker, and lighted on his roof, and said,
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Mulligan, gathered together all my bones, tied them up in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kywitt, kywitt, what a beautiful bird I am.
The shoemaker heard that, and ran out the door in his shirt sleeves, and looked up at the roof, and was forced to hold his hand before his eyes, lest the sun should blind him. Bird, said he, how beautifully thou canst sing! Then he called at his door, Wife, just come outside. There's a bird. Look at that bird. He can sing so well. Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up the street, looked at the bird, and saw how beautiful he was. But that fine red and green feathers what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how his eyes and his head shone like stars. Bird, said the shoemaker, now sing me that song again.
Nay,
said the bird,
I do not sing twice for nothing. Thou must give me something.
Wife, said the man, go to the garret. Upon the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down. Then the wife went and brought back the shoes. There, bird, said the man, now sing me that piece again. Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw, and flew back on the roof and sang,
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Mulligan, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kywitt, kywitt, what a beautiful bird I am.
And when he had sung the whole song, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain and the shoes in his left. And he flew far away to a mill, and the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. And in the mill sat 20 miller's men, hewing a stone and cutting, hick-hack, hick-hack, hick-hack. And the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill, and sang,
My mother, she killed me.
Then one of them stopped working.
My father, he ate me.
Then 2 more stopped working and listened to that.
My sister, little Mulligan,
Then 4 more stopped.
gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief,
Now 8 were hewing. Now 8 only were hewing.
laid them beneath
Now only 5.
the juniper tree.
And now only 1.
Kywitt, kywitt, what a beautiful bird I am.
Then the last stopped, and heard the last words. Bird, he said. Let's try a different accent. Bird, how beautiful thou singst. Let me too hear that. Sing that once more for me.
Nay,
Said the bird.
I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone, and then I will sing again.
Yes, if it belonged to me only, thou shouldst have it. Thou shouldst have it.
Yes, said the others.
Yes, said the others. If he sings again, he shall have it. Then the bird came down, and 20 millers all sat. Then the bird came down, and 20 millers all set to work with the beam and raised the stone up. And the bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone as if it were a collar, and flew onto the tree again and sang.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinkin, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird I am.
And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone. And he flew far away to his father's house. In the rooms sat the father and mother, and Marlinkin at dinner, and the father said, How light-hearted I feel! How happy I am! Nay, said the mother, I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming. Marlinkin, however, sat weeping and weeping. And then came the bird flying, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, Ah, I feel so truly happy. And the sun is shining so beautifully outside, I feel just as if I were to see some old friend again. Nay, said the woman, I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have fire in my veins. And she tore her stays open, but Marlinkin sat in the corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes, and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang.
My mother, she killed me.
Then the mother stopped her ears, and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear, but there was a roaring in her ears, like most a violent storm, and her eyes burnt, and flashed like lightning.
My father, he ate me.
Ah, mother, said the man, that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there's just smell just like cinnamon.
My sister, little Marlinkin.
Then Marlinkin laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing. But the man said, I'm going out. I must see the bird quite close. Oh, don't go, said the woman. I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire. But the man went out and looked at the bird.
Gather together all of my bones, tie them in a silken handkerchief, lay them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird I am.
On this the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly around the man's neck, and so exactly around it that it fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, Just look what a fine bird this is, and what a handsome gold chain he's given me, and how pretty it is. But the woman was terrified and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more.
My mother, she killed me.
Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth so as not to hear that.
My father, he ate me.
Then the woman fell down again, as if dead.
My little sister Marlinkin.
Oh, said Marlinkin, I too will go out and see if the bird will give me anything. And she went out.
Gather together all my bones, tie them in a silken handkerchief.
Then he threw down the shoes to her.
Lay them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird I am.
Then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes and danced and leaped into the house. Ah, she said, I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird, and he gave me a pair of red shoes. Well, said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames of fire, I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if my heart feels lighter. And as she went out the door, crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. The father and Marlinkin heard what happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and Marlinkin by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner, and ate.
What a beautiful bird I am.
Yeah, this story was really weird. Oh, dude! What a beautiful bird I am! Kiwit? Kiwit? Alright. Let's do one last one. If you can give me an exclamation point quote, we will do one more, and then we will call it a strim. What do we got? 205. All right. Okay. You have selected a story called The Girl Without Hands. Oh man, that reminds me of a fucking... Okay, I gotta show you, after this is done, I gotta show you a short movie that I found when I was in school called The Cat with Hands. And it's pretty fairy tale-y, so it kind of fits the theme. So, anyways. The Girl Without Hands. A certain miller had little by little fallen into poverty, and had nothing left but his mill and a large apple tree behind it. Once, when he had gone into the forest to fetch wood, an old man stepped up to him, whom he had never seen before, and said, "Why dost thou plague thyself with cutting wood? I will make thee rich, if thou wilt promise me what is standing behind thy mill." What can that be but my apple tree? Thought the miller, and said, "Yes," and gave a written promise to the stranger. He, however, laughed mockingly and said, "When 3 years have passed, I will come and carry away what belongs to me." And then he went. When the miller got home, his wife came to meet him and said, Tell me, Miller, from whence comes this sudden wealth into our house? All at once every box and chest was filled. No one brought it in, and I know not how it happened." He answered, "It comes from a stranger who met me in the forest, and promised me a great treasure. I, in return, have promised him what stands behind the mill. We can very well give him the big apple tree for it." "Ah, husband," said the terrified wife, "that must have been the devil. He did not mean the apple tree, but our daughter, who was standing behind the mill sweeping the yard." The miller's daughter was a beautiful, pious girl, and lived through the 3 years in the fear of God and without sin. When, therefore, the time was over, and the day came when the evil one was to fetch her, she washed herself clean, and made a circle round herself with chalk. The devil appeared quite early, but he could not come near her. Angrily said to the miller, "Take all water away from her, that she may no longer be able to wash herself, for otherwise I have no power over her." The miller was afraid, and did so. The next morning the devil came again, but she had wept on her hands, and they were quite clean again. Again he could not get near her, and furiously said to the miller, "Cut her hands off, or else I cannot get the better of her." The miller was shocked, and answered, "How could I cut off my own child's hands?" Then the evil one threatened him, and said, "If thou dost not do it, thou art mine, and I will take thee thyself." The father became alarmed, and promised to obey him. So he went to the girl, and said, "My child, if I do not cut off both thine hands, the devil will carry me away, and in my terror I have promised to do it. Help me in my need, and forgive me the harm I do thee." She replied, "Dear father, do with me what you will. I am your child." That's fucked up. Hey kid, I was gonna, sell you to the devil and whatever, but then things backfired, so now I need you to do me a solid. I need you to go hang out with the devil for, let's say, all eternity. You okay with that? Thanks, darling. Okay, thanks, bye. Thereupon she laid down both her hands and let them be cut off. The devil came for the third time, but she had wept so long and so much on the stumps that after all they were quite clean. Then he had to give in, and had lost all right over her. The miller said to her, I have by means of thee received such great wealth, that I will keep thee most delicately as long as thou livest. But she replied, Here I cannot stay. I will go forth. Compassionate people will give me as much as I require. Thereupon she caused her maimed arms to be bound to her back, and by sunrise she had set out on her way, and walked the whole day until night fell. Then she came to a royal garden, and by the shimmering of the moon she saw the trees covered with beautiful fruits grew in it. But she could not enter, for there was much water around it. And as she walked the whole day and not eaten one mouthful, and hunger tormented her, she thought, if I were but inside, that I might eat of the fruit, else must I die of hunger. Then she knelt down, called on God the Lord, and prayed, and suddenly an angel came towards her, who made a dam in the water, so that the moat became dry, and she could walk through it. And now she went into the garden, and the angel went with her. She saw a tree covered with beautiful pears, but they were all counted. Then she went to them, and skip. The gardener was watching, but as the angel was standing by, he was afraid and thought the maiden was a spirit, and was silent, neither did he dare to cry out or to speak to the spirit. When she had eaten the pear, she was satisfied, and went and concealed herself among the bushes. The king to whom the garden belonged came down to it the next morning and counted, and saw one of the pears was missing, and asked the gardener what had become of it, as if it was not lying beneath the tree, but gone. Then answered the gardener, Last night a spirit came in, who had no hands, and ate off one of the pears with its mouth. The king said, How did a spirit get over the water, and where did it go after it had eaten the pear? The gardener answered, Someone came in a snow-white garment from heaven who made a dam, and kept back the water. Then the spirit might walk, through the moat. And as it must have been an angel, I was afraid, and asked no questions. It did not cry out. When the spirit had eaten the pear, it went back again. The king said, If it be as thou sayest, I will watch with thee tonight. When it grew dark, the king came into the garden and brought with him a priest, who was to speak to the spirit. All three seated themselves beneath the tree and watched. At midnight, the maiden came creeping out of the thicket, went to the tree, and again ate one pear off it with her mouth, and beside her stood the angel in white garments. Then the priest went to them and said, Comest thou from heaven or from earth? Art thou a spirit or a human being? She replied, I'm no spirit, but an unhappy mortal deserted by all but God. The king said, If thou art forsaken by all the world, yet will I not forsake thee. He took her with him into his royal palace, and as she was so beautiful and good, he loved her with all his heart, had silver hands made for her, and took her to wife. What parent would ever agree to something like that? That's my question. That's, beyond fucked. After a year, the king had to take the field. So he commended his young queen to care for. He took her with him into his royal palace, and as she was so beautiful and good, he loved her with all his heart, had silver hands made for her, and took her to wife. After a year, the king had to take the field, so he commended his young queen to take care of his mother, and said, "If she is brought to bed, take care of her, nurse her well, and tell me of it at once in a letter." How's she gonna write with those hands? Just like stuck like that. I don't know. Then she gave birth to a fine boy. So the old mother made haste to write and announce the joyful news to him. But the messenger rested by a brook on the way, and as he was fatigued by great distance, he fell asleep. Then came the devil, who was always seeking to injure the good queen, and exchanged the letter for another in which was written that the queen had brought a monster into the world. When the king read the letter, he was shocked and much troubled, but he wrote in answer that they were to take care of the queen and nurse her until his arrival. The messenger went back with the letter, but rested at the same place and again fell asleep. Then came the devil once more, and put a different letter in his pocket, in which it was written that they were to put the queen and her child to death. The old mother was terribly shocked when she received the letter, and could not believe it. She wrote back to the king, but received no answer, because each time the devil substituted a false letter, and the last letter it was also written that she was to preserve the queen's tongue and eyes as a token that she had obeyed. But the old king wept to think such innocent blood was to be shed, and had a hind brought by night, and cut her tongue and eyes, and kept them. Then she said to the queen, "I cannot have thee killed as the king commands, but here thou mayest stay no longer. Go forth into the wide world with thy child, and never come here again." The poor woman tied her child on her back and went away with eyes full of tears. She came into a great wild forest, and then fell on her knees and prayed to God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to her, and led her to a little house on which was a sign with the words, "Here all dwell free." A snow-white maiden came out of the little house and said, "Welcome, Lady Queen," and conducted her inside. Then they unbound the little boy from her back, and held him to her breast that he might feed, and laid him in a beautifully made little bed. Then the poor woman, From whence knowest thou that I was a queen?" The white maiden answered, "I am an angel sent by God to watch over thee and thy child." The queen stayed 7 years in the little house, and was well cared for, and by God's grace, because of her piety, her hands which had been cut off grew once more. At last the king came home from the war, and his first wish was to see his wife and child. Then his aged mother began to weep and say, "Thou wicked man, why didst thou write to me that I was to take those 2 innocent lives?" And she showed him the 2 letters which the evil one had forged. And then continued, "I did as thou badest me," and she showed the tokens, the tongue and the eyes. Then the king began to weep for his poor wife and his little son so much more bitterly than she was doing, that the aged mother had compassion on him and said, "Be at peace, she still lives. I secretly caused a hind to be killed, and took these tokens from it. But I bound the child to thy wife's back, and bade her go forth into the wide world, and made her promise never to come back here again, because thou wert so angry with her." Then spake the king, I will go as far as the sky is blue, and will neither eat nor drink until I have found again my dear wife and my child, if in the meantime they have not been killed or died of hunger. Thereupon the king traveled about for 7 long years, and sought her in every cleft of the rocks, and in every cave, but he found her not, and thought she had died of want. During the whole of this time he neither ate nor drank, but God supported him. At length he came into a great forest, and found therein the little house whose sign was, Here all dwell free. Then forth came the white maiden, took him by the hand, led him in, and said, Welcome, Lord King. She asked him from whence he came. He answered, Soon shall I have traveled about for the space of 7 years, and I seek my wife and her child, but cannot find them. The angel offered him meat and drink, but he did not take anything, and only wished to rest a little. Then he lay down to sleep, and put a handkerchief over his face. Thereupon the angel went into the chamber where the queen sat with her son, whom she usually called Sorrowful, and said to her, Go out with thy child, thy husband hath come. So she went to the place where he lay, and the handkerchief fell off his face. Then she said, Sorrowful, pick up thy father's handkerchief, and cover his face again. The child picked it up and put it over his face again. The king in his sleep heard what passed, and had pleasure in letting the handkerchief fall off once more. But the child grew impatient, and said, Dear mother, how can I cover my father's face, when I have no father in this world? I have learnt to say the prayer, Our Father which art in heaven. Thou hast told me that my father was in heaven, and was the good God. And how can I know a wild man like this? He is not my father. When the king heard that, he got up and asked who they were. Then said she, I am thy wife, and that is thy son Sorrowful. And he saw her living hands, and said, My wife had silver hands. She answered, The good God has caused my natural hands to grow again. And the angel went into the inner room, and brought the silver hands, and showed them to him. Hereupon he knew for certainty that this was his dear wife, and his dear child, and he kissed them, and was glad, and said, A heavy stone has fallen from off my heart. Then the angel of God gave them one meal with her, and after that they went to the king's aged mother. There were great rejoicings everywhere, and the king and queen were married again, and lived contentedly to their happy end. Hello, what's going on? How you doing, Tyler? How are things? You have just made it to the end of this stream. I wanted to take the opportunity, though, to show you guys a really quick, short movie that I think kind of applies to our last story of the maiden with no hands. All right. Which, I guess it's this one.
Last night as I slumbered, I had a strange dream, one that seemed to bring distant friends near. I dreamt of the faces of people I loved, and I awoke with an heart full of cheer. You know this is the place, don't you?
This is the place.
Where it comes from. So they say.
Can't I know?
Story has it a boy came face to face with that animal. Right here. right where we're standing now.
Hey, look, it's a cat with hands. How ridiculous.
Hello, sir. Pleased to meet you.
What's wrong with the kid's face? Well, now it's his face. All right.
Over the years, it carried on like this, thieving different parts of people, like it wanted to be a person. Until that animal looked just like you or me on the outside. But the only human part it never got was that.
Oh.
Tongue.
All right.
Last night as I slumbered, I had a strange dream. One that seemed to bring distant friends near. I dreamt of the faces of people I loved. And I woke with an heart full of cheer.
Yep. So that's the cat with hands. Do. Glad I could say hi at least. Yes, we're happy that you were able to stay by. Come on by. Did you ever get it figured out? Yes. Oh, you had to go live on YouTube. Yeah, it's a little bit different. So much easier on Twitch. You just hit go live on OBS or Streamlabs and you're live. Well, that was creepy as fuck. On YouTube, you have to set up a live stream ahead of time on YouTube and then click go live on both OBS as well as YouTube Studio. Actually, we don't have to. We just do the go live on OBS. I think there's a setting that you must be missing. Jill, did you make that? That's so fucked up. I wish I could be that creative. Anyways, that is going to do it for me tonight. Tomorrow, I was kind of thinking about streaming a little bit earlier so that I can get more done in Resident Evil VR. I would at least like to get finished with the castle portion. So we'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow. But at the very least, tomorrow we will be continuing. Excuse me. We will be continuing the Resident Evil 4 VR. So, all right. I think that's it. Thanks for coming by, everyone. And like we always say, night, night, and don't let the cats bite. See ya.